Christ.
Welcome back, everybody. H is for Herbert. Don't get it twisted.
Jesus H. Christ, y'all.
It's for Herbert. Welcome back to another week of Deconstruction Junction. It is November the 2nd. I'm Dr. Flo, online mentor and coach. I help bold dreamers follow their bliss and get from point A to B and B to C and C to D as they launch their dreams in the world to make these giant dreams, mini projects where we can be proud of ourselves. We are joined every week by the wonderful bottle-having supermom, Tara Praolo Studio. Introduce yourself and what you bring to the space.
You're okay. Hello, I am Tara Praolo. I am your resident white-facing biracial multi-passionate musician. And I talk about the issues that nobody wants to talk about and push you to do the same. And I come to Deconstruction Junction so that I can deconstruct all of the stuff that nobody really wants to recognize during the week and how it affects us. Excuse you, babes.
Yeah, there's so much that people don't want to talk about. And I wanted to do this week's icebreakers with a couple of the questions that even recently just came up. That might be a benefit for us to consider. The first one was what do you crave that's not good for you? And I'm not sure that I had an answer for this. She asked it in the last taping of the last podcast, and I still Popeyes is the first thing that comes to mind. Like super rich and fattening foods and like cakes and pies. I crave them. They're not good for the blood sugar, but I love them so much. Poppy Water bought some of these donuts. These little like jumbo donuts individually wrapped that he wanted to give to the guys that work with him or for him on the line. And I was allotted 4 and I ate them all in like a day and a half. So I crave stuff like that. On a social level, maybe the attention of followers, the approval of I would accomplish this dream in my life, but what will they think about it? What will they say? Or how will it be judged? And so what do I crave that's not good for me? Public approval or a desire for early and quick adoption of my ideas. People are already slow to warm their own change, right? So when I come in with a new idea and I'm craving that they get, we're cooking Praolo today. She got there in drafts. Heard that first kernel pop. Heard that first.
Or as my ASMR lady does with fireworks, she goes.
We got there. We got there because it's the craving of the acceptance of my radical idea. Even if it's your loved and lovable and all of your dreams are possible with the little works that comes along with the perks. It still is like, oh, and when people don't accept it the first time I say it, or after the 11th touch, or the 22nd touch, or the 33rd touch, or the 44th touch, touch people 55 times, and on the 56th time they go, oh, you're coach, you can help me with this, right? It's important that I do not crave instantaneous acceptance.
Yeah.
Not with what I'm talking about out here, girl.
Right. There's going to be questioning, and there's going to be direct, like in your line of work, in our line of work, there's a lot of people that we meet that are directionless. And when we attempt to show them the multiple directions that they can go, they're going to have questions about that. Or we meet a lot of people that just aren't as tech savvy, right? Or we meet a lot of people that don't read and write. Or we meet a lot of people that aren't performance trained, right? We meet a lot of people that don't have, they have a really great raw talent, but they got a microphone hand that goes wackadoodle. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're, and those people, while they may want to align, don't, and you know, this is getting into, I think, a later topic, but like, people want things, and a lot of people don't know how to get what they want, right? Or they don't know how to exist in what they want. So yeah, instant gratification and instant validation, right? Like, and validation, like external validation for you, I mean, it is a large thing over the years, and I won't deny that. Like, I want external validation just as much as the next. Social media trains us that way, right? Like, I went to my Instagram stories this morning and I was like so disappointed because my spill the beans yesterday was really strong, and I made a really strong post last night, and 3 people have seen it because Instagram decided that I was talking too boldly about not voting. Right? And so, like, but and that, like, I was like, okay, maybe my content's wrong. Maybe I should stop talking like that. Like, you know what I mean? And so, like, I think we all have a habit of craving external validation. And you, from my observation, you crave it from people that maybe uh can't necessarily give it in a way that you can accept it from them, if that makes sense, right? And I think I have the same type of thing. Like, I'm like, oh, if people just liked my post, if people just shared my post, somebody shared my post, and I was like, oh, that wasn't actually the validation that I was wanting. I wanted to have a conversation about it. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, so then do I have to go start the conversation? So I crave. What do I crave? What do I crave that's not good for me? Like you, I crave sweets. I do. I do love. uh I like Reese's, y'all. Like, I like Reese's, and I like mint cookies, like Thin Mints, cha, and caramel cake. Like, listen, I, and cake in general. I also crave, as I've said, external validation. I crave. Uh, I think one of the psychological things for me is I crave uh connection and innovation in a way that hasn't been seen yet, and so I get stuck. That's something that causes me to get stuck, and I crave that so desperately, but I don't know how to get there. Or it hasn't been built yet, or the apps haven't caught up, right? So that's something that I crave. What else do I crave that's not good for me? Red meat. I really like steak. Like, I really like steak, and I
That is
really like
real.
hamburger.
I
I
I
really
tra
like
I
hamburger.
I traded all of my ground meat last night for steak and my Taco Bell, which turned it into like a $90 Uber Eats run, but I'm telling you, it was so worth it. I rarely allow myself to have the red meat.
It is, it's just a, I
What
love
a
it.
treat. Speaking of what we do crave, though, just not to be all Debbie Downers, I heard you craving growth. I heard you craving change. I heard you craving conversations. I heard you craving connection. And that's something here in the network that we're not going to give up on because it's a selfish pursuit for me. I want those things too. I want growth. I want conversation. I want connection. I want change.
We're fine. Piper's just trying to get on the screen, and we're not
I see. I
doing
see.
that.
We're not quite ready for our debut today.
Yeah.
And so it's good to know what we're craving that's not good for us. It's good to know what we're craving that is good for us. And it's also important that we see our strengths as the things they are. A lot of us don't celebrate ourselves as much as we could. And you have a brag book exercise that I would invite you to share with the people about. But I think that maybe the reason why we are not finding ourselves to be as strong as we could find ourselves is because we're not allowing all of our daily wins to be a starting place of greater courage and confidence. What say you about the ways in which we discredit our wins and the way that it makes us feel weak?
I have thoughts. My thoughts are, and this can also relate a little bit to what we're going to be talking about later in terms of politics. I think we move the goalposts on ourselves a lot, and we move the goalposts on politicians a lot, and we change expectations based on like who we're talking to. So typically we have the highest expectations on ourselves, and if we do not meet that expectation, then clearly we did not get that win. Right? Even though we probably completed 97% of the steps that we didn't celebrate, and the 3% of the steps isn't done.
Our negativity bias focuses on that 3% that we did not complete as opposed to the 97% that we did. Mm-hmm.
Right. So this brag book exercise is essentially, and I will be bringing back Goal Getter, y'all. Stay tuned for Black Friday. I am planning to November is going to be a month of selling. I think we're getting into this later, but November is going to be moving towards selling a whole bunch of things and bringing things into fruition that have been sitting there for a while. But one of the very first pages of my Goal Getter is to basically list out, I think it says 10 positive things that happened this year. And last year we found that a few people in our network had a hard time initially getting to 10. They had a hard time recognizing these wins. And so the idea of a brag book is whenever you do feel good or whenever you do find a win, you write that down on a page and you just keep going. Whatever win you've had in your life, right? So for me, when I got 3rd place in the science fair, right? When I built the TV set, the fake TV set for my okra show, the Piper. I think that was communication to the toy. I don't think that was for us. Anyway, that was new, friends. I'm always learning things as a mom. Unclear. Are you okay? Hey, are you talking to the toy? That's a toy talk. Apologies, y'all. We're talking to the toy. Full conversation.
Is the toy talking back?
No, it's in the mouth. It is in the mouth like this, and Piper is going. Anyway, brag book. You're writing down everything that you can think of that was positive, that you won, that you were rewarded for in your life. So that on the rainy days when you can't think of anything positive, when you just think, I haven't done XYZ and I'm just shit because I didn't do nothing and da 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 da, right? When you're thinking all that, you go look at your brag book and you realize just how much you've done.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a great exercise. I think that it's also important that when you are going back into your past to look at all of your brags, to use them to strengthen you, but don't stay in them so long that they become a trap. What I've noticed recently is going into my past and thinking about my accomplishments. While they do make me feel strong, they also make me sad about maybe easier time I had at doing the things I do. That could be just my body. I don't twirl on my head the way I used to as a performer.
Or it could just be that you're not celebrating your accomplishments in this moment. So yes, the past is a siphon. I know where you're going. With this. However, Stuart Little, the book and the movie Chow, taught us that there is a silver lining in everything, right? So even in the worst of situations, such as, let me use Gaza, for example, there are still songs being sung. right? There are still people trying to cook for the community. There are teachers trying to teach the kids. There are doctors trying to help. There are silver linings. And the trauma never should have happened. The bombs never should have fallen, but they did. And still there is a silver lining. And so, sure, maybe some things are a little bit harder. That was what happened on my TV screen, was interesting that I looked up at that moment. Anyway, and I think, yes, don't necessarily stay there and don't try to chase the high of the win right at the moment that it happened, because you want your happiness and your joy to come from present, right? But at the same time, like, if you're not finding the same joy and the same wins in the things that you're doing right now, then are you really acknowledging and experiencing your wins that you're having right now?
Ooh, the present moment is like the best place to be in. It's got the most adventure and the best baby squeals. Thank y'all so much for joining into Deconstruction Junction, where Tara and I pick apart the ideas that have been in our brains and the things that we see in the community throughout the week. It's also a place where we grab a quick bite to eat, and that's completely okay. I want to talk about the election that's coming up in a few days. And, you know, how are we feeling about the presence of good in American politics? Borrowing from the John Lewis quote or adage that we should be making good trouble as it relates to moving social justice and human rights forward. Do you think that good is at the center of American politics as it stands today, in your perspective?
I'm going to share John's words first. Okay, so this is a quote. It's not a quote. It's a post, is what I'm trying. Can you see? Can y'all see John? There's John. There's my man, John. It says quotes from the late Congressman John Lewis on the power of voting. My greatest fear is that one day we may wake up and our democracy is gone. Too many people struggled, suffered, and died to make it possible for every American to exercise their right to vote. Get in good trouble. This is my favorite one, y'all. Necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. The vote is precious. It is almost sacred. It is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have in a democracy. And then they like requoted the same thing. So I'm not going to read that last one. It just says the vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool we have. So I think they're trying to convince people to vote. Now, I don't necessarily believe that. I saw a video the other day, and really this election, you know, Dr. Flo and I have been kind of joking along all week about how, you know, back when we believed, back in 2016 when we were youngsters and believed, right? We believed in the system. We voted, you know, we colored in the bubble all nice and hard. And we were like, yeah, we did something. You know, not to say at the same time that we weren't also organizing in community, and we were not also creating spaces that were more radical than voting allows us to be, right? But now in this election, you know, as I said in my riff a couple weeks ago on my Lift Every Voice Substack, I understand the people that aren't voting. And I saw a video on TikTok, and I can't remember who the creator was, but essentially it was like, it was a Black man, and he was sharing, you know, he's like, I understand why Palestinians wouldn't vote, because everyone's doing the same thing to them as we have done to Black people for hundreds of years, which is to just say, sit down, we'll deal with you in 500 years, right? Like, you're going to get your liberation, but your problem, it's not as big as my problem, right? Like my problem needs to be paramount. My problem needs to be front and center. Let's play the oppression Olympics. Like I'm getting killed.
Me first.
Right.
Me
I'm getting
first.
killed too. So you need to sit down and vote for this black woman because I'm getting killed. Which is true, right? We can hold two truths. What's wrong? Are you talking or are you upset? It's all very unclear at this age, y'all. It's very unclear. But I think, I think that John Lewis, I think, believed and had every reason in the time that he was living to believe in democracy. I think that over the past year of watching a genocide being live streamed, which is something that we have never seen before, folks, right? Like we have never seen something like that. Like George Floyd was Piper, like George Floyd, jeez, was different, right? It was different because we watched a 9-minute video, almost 10-minute video. We watched that collectively. And now we are collectively watching videos coming out of Gaza every single day of hospitals being turned to rubble, of children being run over by bulldozers, of firing squads, right? Of people starving. We see that every day. And so I think John had much more belief, like Martin Luther King Jr. did, that the world could be changed by the power of the vote. And I don't think that the world can be changed by the power of a vote at this point, because the votes are manipulated, right? The votes are lied to on both sides, right? What did Joe Biden promise us to get him in office? He promised he was going to do something for the young people. He promised us student loan relief. He promised us, right? He promised us climate change relief. He promised us, and he did not do any of it. And we knew that voting for him, right? I voted for him because there was not another option. And also to be clear, we have never been a democracy. If we were a democracy, the Electoral College would not exist. And that's really the game we're playing here, is that the Electoral College is actually an undemocratic device. It's a system. It's a tool of white supremacy. It's a tool of capitalism. It is a tool to manipulate the masses in order for the 1% to keep power. And I just, what I said in my post yesterday is what I saw Christiana Smith echo and what I've seen a couple other people echo and what I've been begging for in between times. You cannot show up to a freaking voting booth every 4 years and expect it to change the world. It's not. I'm so sorry, y'all. It is not. You checking a box for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or Jill Stein, which, by the way, Jill Stein, listen, that Green Party has a problem and has been coming out. And we're not shocked. We're not surprised.
Well, no, now I'm interested. What's been coming out about Jill Stein and the party?
Her VP pick, transphobic. She's been caught being racist. Listen, bad things. Okay, like I'm not shocking. It's not shocking. It just is.
Speaking of being called racist, there's a part of that quote that says where John Lewis is pleading for the soul of America. Do you think America has a soul?
I think that.
And if you do think that America has a soul, just to give you a moment to conjure and seance the soul of America, if it did have a soul, what would that look like for you? Is it something practical or pie in the sky?
I think that I like to believe that there is good in every person. And because I believe that there is good in every person, I believe in the good that is America and the good of bringing a whole mass of people together to work together to build a new world. Do I think that America right now is very lost, and many people in America are very lost because we're fighting the very people that we need to move forward. Yes, right? I don't think that the soul, the soul of America is not pull yourself up by the bootstraps, which is what a lot of people believe that it is. The soul of America is the soil. It's the trees. It's the things that were here long before those of us who have ancestors who colonized this land, and those of us that were stolen from another land, right? That is the soul. If we listen to the earth, then we find the soul. And we've ceased doing that at the expense of humans and the expense of comfort, right? Of white comfort.
You really went on a tirade last night or night before last about climate change and how no one's paying attention to it. And you think that's actually going to be the thing that fries our bacon.
Yeah.
You still feel that way?
Yep. I've felt that way for a long time. I was one of those, listen, y'all, there was this show, and I talk about this a lot, or have talked about this a lot in the past, and maybe I need to talk about it more. There was this show in the early 2000s. It was on ABC. It was like a mini series. It happened on Sunday nights. I don't remember what it was called, but I remember it was like a future cast of like what the world was going to be like if we didn't do anything about climate change. Okay? This child is eating the air.
And you're talking in our lifetime.
Yes, it was like by 2060. And all of the things that they were like speculating on have started happening. Like they were talking about wind farms as an effort to, slow down climate change. What is Iowa right now? I have seen wind farms being built along the highways of Iowa. I have seen the hurricanes come. I have seen the storms get worse. I have seen the tornadoes become F5s. I have seen need for a Category 6 hurricane. I've seen need for them to up the severity on the scales. I've seen it be 60 degrees in the middle of a Minnesota winter. Like, and that whole series was essentially to try and wake America up, and it was a ploy to vote democratically, but as we see, that didn't work. But it was trying to get Americans to wake up to the fact that the way that we consume is unsustainable and will kill Mother Earth. And I think this relates to voting in that, like, I saw this post this morning, and someone was, and this is not my favorite way to get people to vote, but it was essentially saying, what I believe, which is, even if you're not trans, even if you're not Black, even if you're not disabled, they're going to come for you too. They're going to come for you too. And climate change does not discriminate. Climate change is coming for you, whether you vote for Donald Trump, whether you vote for Macron, whether you vote for what's his name up in Canada, what's his name?
Justin Trudeau.
That one. Or whether we vote for an indigenous person, or whether we vote for Kamala. Like, climate change is coming for us. It doesn't discriminate that way. And so I think because we are not aligned, and because we can't even get 100% of the people to believe that climate change is real, right? It will be the end of all of us, because it is the one thing that is bigger than all of us. And it's a little too late to stop it.
Yeah, COVID showed us that Mother Nature gonna win every time, and she don't care about your feelings. If John Lewis was still here, do you think that he would be shaking his head or rolling up his sleeves?
I think that John Lewis would roll up his sleeves in support of Kamala, simply because she's a Black woman. And I think that representation was something that was very, very important to that group of activists and politicians, right? And so I think he would be rolling up his sleeves in the same way that he did, because he didn't leave this earth so long ago, right? In the same way that he did for Obama, Piper. In the same way that he did for, for Biden. Like, he would be rolling up his sleeves because he believed that the Democrats, for all their flaws, right? And I believe he knew there were flaws. I think at the end of the day, he believed that they were the party that at the very least could feign listening and allow progressives and people and activists, right, like himself, to get into office, right? So
yeah, I'm with you.
I think he'd roll up his sleeves and say, you know what? You gotta, we gotta take a pill. Which pill are you gonna take?
I despise that it came to this. I really, really do. We're gonna pivot a bit in our programming out of American politics into what's happening in our own backyards and in our relationships. Um, I've found, and maybe some of you who were watching or listening back on the podcast or watching Love and Action TV on my YouTube or Substack at wherever you are. Thanks for watching and listening. I found that sometimes when I'm talking to my friends and talking to people within the network, or just relating to people professionally, um, that unless the individual is witnessed by someone whom they admire or have respect for and don't want to look bad in front of, sometimes things don't quite move. You see this in professional spaces by things moving forward by the CC line. If I CC your boss, it may get done a bit quicker because you want to secure your job and maintain. It's happening also now. I'm seeing it trickle down into my personal relationships where if I tell someone something one to one, it can, if there's respect and a rapport there, sure, they may actually do what they say. However, if I add in a community witness, which is biblical in nature, there's all a bunch of
I'm a witness
habababa.
for
Yeah,
Jesus.
exactly. The whole thing is based around witnessing and being the witness. Anyway, it brought me to the topic of the power of three will set us free. Do you think that there's something to even with the Kamala thing, just witnessing a woman uh go that high up in government did something for the others who are witnessing, and do you think it's enough to just tip it all over? For those of you who are,
Listening.
I just
No.
choked. Yeah, for those of us, I choked on my own thoughts. For those of you who are our ASMR listeners, there was a gentle right to left, left to right. I don't think so either. I think that we are going to be galvanized. Listen, if I wake up the day after and she is the next president of the United States,
It will not be
I
the day after. I listen, I'm sorry. I gotta cut in here because I need some of you to know, because this happened 4 years ago, and people were, and this is why the election was stolen lie was able to sink in. It will take time to count the votes. It will take multiple days to count the votes.
and it's going to take it because we have these amazing cell phones that nobody thinks we can vote on. And so we're going to need to go like the Pony Express from county to county and verify and send it in, and all of these these things that also pay the poll people who are relying on that paycheck every 4 years, right? Like there's just so much antiquated habababa, I think, in it, that it's going to take a while. And no matter who wins, 50% of the population is still going to say, I ain't with it, and create their own kind of ruckus that we're going to have to contend with in the grocery store. And if you don't pick up your groceries or send your husband.
Right. Uh to your point though, of will a woman installed? I mean, I think I keep seeing these posts also like reminding that the Democratic Party is not nearly as left as people make it seem to be. Like at best, it's a centrist party, right? At worst, it's actually still over on the right side. You know what I mean? And I think it would be one thing to have a woman like, let's say, a Cori Bush or an Ilhan Omar or someone like that at the top of the ticket, right? Or even a Stacey Abrams who, has towed the line, but still has managed to create some pretty radical things inside of the system. Or a John Lewis, right? Or a Martin Luther King. Can you imagine if Martin Luther King was on the top of the ticket? Like those are activist progressive giants that I think would have a large role in toppling this system. I do not think okay, and let me also frame this a different way, because that's what the Republicans wanted when they voted for Donald Trump. I need y'all to hear part of this, that yes, Donald Trump is racist. He's a racist motherfucker. Okay, he's racist, and he's horrible, and he's deplorable, and he says all of the quiet things out loud that ain't none of us want to hear, child. Okay, but he also was elected to drain the swamp. He was elected to change Washington. That was the ticket he ran on in 2016 when he won, excuse me. And so, we keep sort of moving towards these elections of like, oh, Barack Obama is going to be the thing that changes. Oh, Trump's going to be the thing that rolls over Washington. Oh, I don't think anybody thought that about Joe Biden, but people were trying to market Joe Biden as a progressive. And I was like, he is not progressive. He's like barely a moderate. He's barely a moderate. And so what I'm saying here is that we've got one person who's already proven to us in Trump that he's not going to change Washington at all. In fact, he's just going to engage in every scam that is Washington. And then on the other side, we have a black woman, a black Indian woman who is probably more right than even Joe Biden. And that's it, so that's not going to topple a system.
And by right, folks, we're not talking about her policies or rhetoric. We're talking about conservative opinion.
Right. Like
conservative ideal.
And she is sharing a lot of those talking points at this moment. In fact, she has already promised to be worse on immigration than Joe Biden. She wants to be tougher on immigration. There are things that Kamala is more right than Donald Trump, the populist, is. The populist, the fascist, the whatever you want to call him. And so is it enough to have a black Indian woman? Is it enough to have the representation? And I think we've already proven that the answer is no. Right? And we can stretch this back to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was elected because he was not a politician. He was an actor. Right? This is why we get like ex-NFL stars, like whatever the heck that guy's name was in Georgia a few years ago. What the heck was his name? The abuser? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Legit started with an H, I'm pretty sure.
Herschel Walker. Thank you.
That one. Herschel Walker. Anyway, this is why we get people like that who run, right? And it's just one of those things that no one is coming to save you. So stop making it seem like the government is going to save you. Stop making it seem like one black woman at the top of a ticket is going to save you.
We're really going to have to do more community building. Do you think people really want community, or do you think they want to complain? I think they like complaining. I think there's a hypnotic rhythm around complaining. I think that if we actually had to meet once or twice or 3 times a week in order to move this, people would say, why?
I think that, yes, people want to complain, but I also think that they want community. But I think they want community in an abstract definition of community. Like, I don't think they want what actual community is, which is thinking differently and moving towards the same goal and actually caring for people and actually, you know, putting your body on the line if it comes to that for another person, right? You know, community is when there's a cop car parked at the top of the neighborhood, everybody comes out of their house to make sure that that person is not hurt because they are Black, brown, or Hispanic, right? And or Latinx. And I think there's a couple different things that are coming up for me here in terms of like, do people actually want community? I think there's a lie that community doesn't include individuality. And I think capitalism has deluded us into believing that individuality is the only way to like exist. And hyper individuality, again, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, save your damn self. Like, no one's coming to save you. It is true. There is a truth to that. And you can be an individual in community. You can, in fact, think completely differently and still be in community with people, right? You can approach something completely differently. For instance, you see Dr. Flo and I, both radical people, both similar belief systems, right? Yet we approach things in very different manners. Dr. Flo calls it my casserole, right? Like, that's community. And I think that the other thing, and I think one of our, a person that is in liberation conversations said this, which was like, basically, people don't realize that community is work. And we've seen this over the years, right? People don't realize that like it is actual effort to come into a group chat and talk. It is effort to maintain even your closest relationships, right? If you don't talk to your husband when they come in the house, if you don't talk to your partner when they come in the house, do you have a relationship? You don't talk to them all week and they're just coming in and out of the house? Do you actually have a relationship? No, right? So relationships take work, and so does community. And I think when people start getting sort of deeper, even like deeper than that very surface level of like, oh, you're connected with us, you're on you're on the email list, right? I think when you start delving deeper into that, you realize just how much work it is. And to be 100% honest, this is why I shied away from creating my own group spaces for a long time, or even a podcast, because that comes with a community, and it is work to upkeep that community, in particular as a light worker and healer and a person trying to make sure that people are not harmed, but knowing that people will be harmed by community that I build. Knowing that, because people are people, right? And knowing that I, at the end of the day, am responsible then for that harm because I brought a group of people together.
Is that responsibility too heavy, you think, for people to take on that risk factor or that responsibility?
Yeah,
That's why people don't build it?
I think so. And I also think that a lot of people are out here with big mouths saying that they want to be seen and they don't actually want to be seen. You don't actually want to be witnessed. Because being witnessed, back to our community witness, being witnessed means that people see all of you. They see your ass, child, and they see your heart. Right? And most of us don't want to acknowledge that bad part exists, right? That part that can do harm to literally anyone, right? You can read all the damn books you want. You can read all the articles, you can watch all the videos. You can be the best, most activist, anti-racist, social justice worker in the world. And you can still harm somebody. And you can still show your ass. It don't matter what color you are, black, yellow, red, purple. It don't matter. You're going to show your ass sometime. And in community, you're witnessed at that too.
That reminds me of this morning, our clubhouse conversation about the word cheeky and how it was like rude, forward, irreverent, like it's like disrespect. Like it was like, I have to own those parts of my nature and how it shows up in community, as mirrored back by the people around me. And a lot of people don't want to build community because they really don't want to see themselves in the mirror that
Yeah.
is community. And I think that as AI continues to grow and as technologies continue to push people into isolated conditions so they can be sold to, I think that community gathering around thoughts and ideas like this one is going to become something that's very, very restorative to people because they won't know what's real from what's not. And don't get it twisted, folks. The game is to scare you.
Mm-hmm.
The game is to scare you and to disconnect you from yourself enough that you will buy something. Speaking of buying things, why do the light workers not sell and ask for the support they need in the ways that we did today in the Love and Action Network orientation?
Run me that question one more time.
I think it's because they're afraid of taking up space. Why do people like ourselves not sell or ask for the things that we need from the community as leaders? We did it today, but then there's more to do. Do you think it has something to do with that there's taking up space and truly belonging to ourselves and then to the world?
I think yes. And for me, it has a lot to do with the perception, right? I'm very wary of the perception of a white person profiting off of Black people. I'm very wary of that perception. As a person that is perceived as white until I'm not. Right. And so for me, that's a very personal reason as to why I don't necessarily sell the activist stuff. But that doesn't lead to why I don't invite people to the free spaces then, which are talking about the shit that matters. Right. And so, I think, yes, it is a lot about people not wanting to take up space and not wanting to actually be seen. And, time and time again, it comes down to, well, I don't want the negative comments. I don't want people to say bad things about me. I don't want to underdeliver. I don't want people to tell people that I didn't make them happy. Da 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 da. I don't want, right? How many times have we heard that as coaches? I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to da 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 da. And so I think there's a lot of reasons for why people don't sell, but at the end of the day, it has more to do with, again, the lack of recognizing yourself. Like, and I think this gets complicated because it's like intention. We say the impact is greater than the intent. Like your intent could be completely pure and holy and good, and yet someone's going to come in and take that as an impact that was negative, right? And I think that's a hard duality to hold often. And we can shrug it off and we can say, well, this offer just wasn't for them, right? It just wasn't for them. They just weren't ready to hear me. But it still cuts us, as you were talking about the negativity bias earlier. It still cuts us. It still hurts. It still hurts for people to storm out the door feeling like they weren't helped when you knew that you helped them. Like that's painful. I've had people do that, and even in branding, right? Somebody stormed out my door and never came back. Right? So for me, it brings up, like, and we were talking at the beginning, the brag book. And I sit here and I'm like, I've never sold nothing successfully. It's not true. It's not true, but in like when I think about selling, I think about all the things that didn't sell, and I think about all the people that walked out, and I think about all the negative comments that I get, and I think about the side eyes that I get, and I think about all the spaces I've been thrown out of, right? And so that negative association with selling comes from those negative things that happened to me, as opposed to having the 2 meetings on Clubhouse that I had with someone who ended up paying me $2,500, I think. Right? Or selling Branding Express no less than 5 times at $850 a pop. Or selling voice lessons, 30 people at a time, voice and piano lessons, 30 people at a time. Some for an hour a month, right? And that's no small chunk of change. That's a couple $1,000s a year. Right? And so like I think I don't want to speak to your experience because it's likely vastly different than mine. But I know that all those thoughts come up for me when I think about selling and when I think about showing up online. As I said, I have to sell in November. I have to sell in December. I have to get this going because it feels the scale has finally tipped to I know that my impact needs to be larger and witnessed by more people. And if that means that I have to pull people in by them paying me, then that's what it means. Right? Or if that means that I have to sell my free stuff over and over and over and over again for 22, 44, 55, 79 touches, then that's what I have to do because the work that I'm doing is worth that. And so once I start really believing that of all of my products, right, then I can believe more in the selling and maybe not be so affected by the negativity bias. What about you? I hope that all made sense. It was meandering.
It did to me. It did to me. The game is changing. Because the game is changing technologically, whether it's in a TikTok space, a YouTube space, a Facebook space, whatever spaces we're in, if you're a person out here who wants to be expressed and witnessed in the world, I'm not talking about the fame game. I'm just talking about communicating your thoughts and ideas and having resonance with other humans who say, yeah, I get it and I'm interested in where you're going. And I want to go with you either as a community member, family, soul family member, or a person who pays. It's important that we're just seen in the flea market and marketplace of life for what we're offering. So, as it relates to the prompt of why not sell, why not ask, there's no reason why we cannot sell and why we cannot ask for the things that we want in life. It's just our self-perception of how we're going to come across to others can sometimes get in the way. But I tell you one thing, the cost of this almond milk is not going down, which means that my titties and my tassels got to show.
You got to afford that $11 cereal in New York for one trip a year,
Well, more than that, creatively speaking, that's where the dreamers are. So I got to get back there as often as I can because that's where the dreamers and believers are. And speaking of dreamers and believers, thank y'all for being with us for the last 53 minutes or so. And my consonants are just not happening today. Am I having an online medical situation?
I hope not.
You want to close us out?
Sure thing. We will be back next week around 1:30 p.m. Eastern time for Daily Boost / Deconstruction Junction. You can join us all week long by visiting our lovedandlovable.bio.link, lovedandlovable.bio.link, and checking out our list of events. There will be one holiday movie a day. I still got to get today scheduled. It'll probably be the new Hallmark movie that's on this evening, as well as NFL watch parties. There is one tomorrow during prime time because they flexed to the Vikings game because they hate me and they want me to stay up until the butt crack of dawn worrying about my team. Anyway, that's beside the point. So anyway, sniff around, view the orientation. If you've made it here and you're like, what orientation? Scroll back in the podcast, find it. It'll tell you all of the apps that we use for this network, and then dive in as deep as you want. We will be expressing our needs and seeds. Speaking of selling, we'll be expressing our needs and seeds in all of the online spaces this week and beyond. So make sure you are following Love in Action Net on all platforms, as well as at Andre in the Flow, at Tara Priolo Studio, at PoppyWatcha33, and continue to be anti-racist, be safe, wear a mask, make good trouble, do good work. I love y'all hardcore. You are loved and lovable. Joy is our revolution. Step into it.